Most companies, if I was to go to their landing page right now, it would be all about them. Here's us, we've been in business for 30 years, here's all the awards we've won, here's our values as a company. But nobody
anyone
cares. Nobody cares about that.
Yeah.
They only care about themselves and what you can basically do for them. And people are very desensitized to marketing claims. If most of that has come from your network and referrals and partnerships and kind of word of mouth, then you've never really had to get someone who didn't know who you were on the internet. And the idea of a good growth asset or marketing asset is that it will take that person from a stranger and turn them into a potential customer, into a warm lead.
But why do you think a growth asset is so important?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to overstate the potential impact. And the way to think about it is,
This is the Market Resonance podcast, sponsored by B2B, the growth show for everyday B2B companies. I'm Phil Clare, and I'm joined again by David Ellis, who is the founder of B2B. He's also the person that created the framework we're going to talk about today, the Market Resonance framework. We're going to be talking about a very specific part of that today. We're going to be talking about growth assets. Let's start with what a growth asset actually is.
yeah, would love to. And this is such a powerful idea. Like, I love talking about this stuff. This gets me excited because I think it can be really transformative for a company. So the idea of a growth asset is they do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to our sales and our marketing. And so the big idea behind it is we want pieces of marketing collateral or content, we call them assets. We want to be able to put them in front of a potential customer, so a prospect who doesn't know who we are, like a stranger. And the idea of a good growth asset or marketing asset is that it will take that person from a stranger and turn them into a potential customer, into a warm lead. And so it's basically encapsulating what we talked about last time was your product market fit hypothesis or your narrative as an organization. And the reason we call them assets is that they can be absolutely transformative for a business. There are companies that I worked with 4 or 5 years ago that are still using the same landing page copy, the same video sales letters, the same case studies that we created for them. And I know for a fact it's been responsible for millions of dollars worth of revenue for their business. Same in our case, our current video sales letter is something that we've been running for quite a long time now. We've done various iterations of it over the years. Spoiler alert, it's a breakdown of the market resonance framework. And the last iteration of that, I think I recorded back in October 2025. So we're talking 6-7 months ago.
There's a lot of heavy lifting.
Right. And since then, we've generated hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of new revenue directly attributable to people watching this video, getting excited to speak to us, and then ultimately deciding to become a customer down the line. So that's why I'm so excited about this, because I think it really has the power to transform your business if you get it right.
Okay. I mean, you kind of answered it in that little kind of breakdown there, but why do you think a growth asset is so important?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly it, is if you get this right, it can literally transform your business. The right sales letter or the right video sales letter can have such a huge impact on your organization as a whole. It's hard to overstate the potential impact. And the way to think about it as well is, if you're already getting traffic and attention to you as a company, and then you're directing that towards something that turns those people into potential warm leads, that's incredibly powerful. Like if your current landing page converts at 1%, for example, and you can take that to 5% or 10%, that just has such a big impact overall on your organization, especially if you look at it over a long period of time. And I think the important part as well is, like I said, it does a lot of the heavy lifting with your marketing and sales process. Let's use our example. If we didn't have that video sales letter, we would have to manually explain our company, how we think about growth, our track record, our case studies, our credibility and social proof. We would have to manually explain that to every single new person that we spoke with. So number one, it's harder to get people interested in even speaking to you in the first place. And number two, it's much more efficient when they are speaking to you. And this is how we can have a really profitable, efficient marketing and sales function and keep it very lean. We've always only had 1 or 2 people doing that marketing and sales stuff. And it's because we're using leveraged assets like this to do a lot of the heavy lifting for us in practice.
Yeah, super interesting, actually. So what are the different types of asset?
Yeah, so we talk about this idea of having a growth asset stack.
Okay.
And there's basically three components to that. The first is something we call a sales letter. And this is quite foundational. We do this with pretty much all of our new partners. The idea of it is it's supposed to encapsulate that product market fit that we talked about. So it encapsulates your narrative as an organization in one piece of marketing content. So typically it's kind of a long form written piece of content that encapsulates your core argument. And it's narrative focused. It's focused on the customer. It's focused on their pain points, their challenges, and the outcomes that they want to achieve. But usually it's selling an idea or ideas rather than products and services, right? So it's the ideas behind the product or service. So for example, in our business, we use our sales letter and our video sales letter, which is just the video version of the sales letter. We use it to sell this idea of market resonance and the market resonance framework, which is actually just an idea. It's an idea that people can use to grow their business. But I know if I sell that idea well and people adopt that as an idea that they like, then that's one step towards them potentially buying the product or service.
Okay, I've got a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So never talk about your product or service.
Not never,
Okay.
but less. Most companies, if I was to go to their landing page right now, it would be all about them. Here's us. We've been in business for 30 years. Here's all the awards we've won. Here's our values as a company. Like, we're so people focused as a company that nobody cares. Nobody cares about that.
Yeah.
They only care about themselves and what you can basically do for them. And so, for example, historically, and this is what we've done in our business, we do it with all of our partners as well. The main landing page is almost entirely focused on the person we're trying to speak to. We'll get into the sort of structure of a sales letter later, but we do talk briefly about our company, but it's in passing. It's quite brief actually, and so it's mostly designed around the ideas that you're trying to sell and less around your actual products and service. Again, we're speaking primarily to B2B companies here. Most of them are kind of expert-led, so they've been in their space for a long time. They have a unique perspective. They have unique ideas that they can position and sell. And it's not about selling hundreds of $100 widgets. It's about closing a handful of high-value consulting or service deals. So that's who we're really talking to here. And we find in B2B marketing, this idea of selling ideas is incredibly powerful. So with the sales letter, that's basically what it is it encapsulates your core argument or your core narrative as an organization. So that's the first growth asset. The second one is more optional, is basically a video version of the written sales letter. I love these because I think you can just translate a lot of information on video that you maybe wouldn't be able to translate in a written version.
What happens if you don't like being on video?
This is an optional step.
Okay.
This is not mandatory.
Do you find that one is better than the other?
It depends, really. I think I only recommend these video sales letters to people that are comfortable creating content and have some experience creating video content. If they're not, it can be quite difficult to do this well, to be honest. And you have to ask yourself, is like the juice worth the squeeze? Like if you're taking a month to produce a piece of content and there's a lot of activation energy needed to do that, and then it's not that great at the end, then it's probably not worth it. You're probably best to focus your attention elsewhere. The written version is really important because you want someone to be able to land on your website, understand your core narrative, your core argument, and then be able to take the action that we want. The video is optional. I love them. I've used them a lot in our business over the years. And it's interesting, once you start to get the hang of this, you sort of realize that you can use them for everything. So for example, now when we're hiring, we run a job ad to a landing page, which is a sales letter with a video sales letter selling the position to the person. And you can start using them for everything basically over time. So that's the sales letter and the video sales letter. The third one is case studies.
Okay.
For me,
Surely super important.
super important.
Okay.
Yeah. It's amazing to me how many companies either don't have case studies or don't have good case studies. That it's remarkable how many B2B companies
Just
don't
as a
do that.
consumer, I'm kind of thinking a lot of the time I probably subconsciously look for them, even if I don't think I'm looking for them.
100%. It's going to be really difficult to get someone who doesn't know who you are to buy from you if they don't see any track record and case studies.
Mm.
So I think what often happens is the companies that we work with, they're they're successful. They've been going for many, many years often. And, they might be generating several million in turnover. If most of that has come from your network and referrals and partnerships and kind of word of mouth, nothing wrong with that. But if most of your business has come from that, you've never really had to get someone who didn't know who you were on the internet and get them to a point where they want to buy from you.
Yeah.
And so you don't need case studies necessarily if people are coming to you from recommendations, because you've already, like, the trust is built in because you've been recommended to them. If you haven't had that, that's where you desperately need case studies, right? Because you need to be able to say, here's our track record as an organization. Here are examples of similar companies and the results that we've been able to achieve. So for me, sales letter, mandatory. Case studies, mandatory. And the video sales letter is optional if you have the time and energy for it.
And what happens, I'm thinking just specifically about maybe startups or companies that are quite new. What happens if they don't have a lot of case studies, or maybe sometimes none?
So it's very common, sometimes you don't have any case studies yet, or for one reason or another, you can't write them up for whatever reason. In these cases, I would say one of your primary business objectives should be to get a case study as soon as possible. So the quicker you get the case study, the quicker you can then use that to get more case studies. And so I would be saying that should be the primary goal of the business right now. And there are other ways to fill up what I would call the social proof tank, right? So you need, in order for someone who doesn't know who you are to buy from you, you need a level of trust. They need to trust you. And so one of the best ways to fill up the social proof tank, if we want to call it that, is to create case studies. So that might put 10 units of trust into the social proof tank, right? If we don't have any case studies, we're just going to have to use different ways of producing that credibility and that trust. So for example, it might be testimonials from your first batch of clients. It might be accreditations or awards. It might be metrics from your business. So on average, people see XYZ results using our solution. Sometimes it can be your own, if you're the founder of the company, it can be your own personal track record and your own sort of story, which can add a lot of credibility to the social proof tank. So basically, if you don't have the case studies yet, first answer is try and get them as soon as possible. Secondly, you have to be a little bit creative around finding other ways to add to that social proof tank.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because it's like, it sounds so simple, but it's sometimes we just kind of miss all these things. And they're the cues that we all need when we're about to buy someone. We need to know they're reputable, that we trust them, that they're going to deliver something good. And you have to kind of prove that immediately within 3, 4, 5 seconds of landing on a website or a LinkedIn page or a
100%.
Yeah.
I think this is getting more and more important,
Yeah.
actually, in the world of AI, in the world where I believe trust is at an all-time low. Like trust of strangers is probably at an all-time low right now. And people are very desensitized to marketing claims. And so you really need that proof. Another thing, this is a bit of a tangent, but another thing that people often say about case studies, another challenge that people have, is that they're under NDA with their clients, or they're not able to mention the company name, et cetera, et cetera. And so just to cover that off quickly, it's still better to have an anonymous case study than to have no case studies.
Yeah.
So you should still write up the story of what happened with that client or that company or that individual that you worked with. What was the before state? What was the after state? What was the journey that organization went on? And then if you really have to, you can anonymize it. Like if they don't want you to mention their name, or if you've signed an NDA, you can just anonymize it. But you do need it.
Okay. This podcast is sponsored by B2B. And if you are ready to stop doing marketing and start growing, then luckily for you, I'm joined by David Ellis, who's going to tell you more about what you should do. What should they do?
So yeah, if you head over to our website now, you'll be able to opt in to check out a video which basically explains a little bit more about my background as the founder of our company, how we work with our clients, case studies, pricing, all of that kind of good stuff, so that you can take it away and decide if you want to learn more or not, and if you want to have a conversation with us. So if you're interested, check that out on the website, and yeah, hope you enjoy.
You just said in that the before state, the after state, is that the structure that you use?
Yes. So the two big problems that people have with case studies, like I said, either they don't have them, which is a big problem, or they have them and they're written very badly. Like they're just kind of corporate jargon that someone can't really wrap their head around what actually happened there. So the structure that we use for case studies is big headline, which is attention-grabbing transformational headline. And then we have the before state. So where was the company before working with you or your organization? So for example, in our case, it would be reliant on referrals to grow, had tried loads of different marketing activities, never produced a result. I don't know, worked with a bunch of agencies that didn't work out. Feel like marketing is a black box, never really understood. These are the type of points in the before state. So we've got before, then we've got after. You'll notice this mirrors the product market fit hypothesis. Like I really just bang on about the same things over and over again. So you've got the before state, and then the after state is where were they after having worked with you. So it might be, in our case, predictable client acquisition machine, grew revenues from X to Y, never have to worry about where their next deal came from. We've got examples of clients where their sales close rate went from 20% to 40%. Others where they had to start a waiting list because they were getting so many new customers. And the reason it's powerful is someone will see that case study and say, my company is like that company. I currently have the problems that they have, the before state that they have, and I want the after state that they got. And so it's really that simple. And to your point, it is incredibly simple, but a lot of people don't do it.
And that you still at that point not really selling the products and service. You're just presenting the situation that company was in and now is in a better state.
Again, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Like we usually have a section which we call process. So it's before, after process. So it's the before state, the after state, and then the process of how we got there. So that's where you might weave in a little bit about your product or service. But again, no one cares about that. People care about the destination.
Themselves. Yeah, they want to see themselves in the company and be like, "Oh, that's me. Exactly. I don't want to be here. I want to be over there."
Yeah.
Super interesting. Can you give me any examples outside of B2B then?
Yeah, tons of examples. So I'm thinking of a consulting company we worked with, and we do this with pretty much all of our partners. It's one of the first things we do. So we do the product market fit hypothesis. We then move into creating the growth assets. We wrote them a sales letter, and we helped them create case studies, and they launched them and they published them on their website, and then they put them on LinkedIn as well. And they just got inundated with people that wanted to work with them.
Right? Such a good problem.
Yeah. This is not a normal, I would say, just to be clear, that's not a typical outcome. Like, don't expect that to necessarily happen. But that has happened in the past. So yeah, loads of examples, loads and loads of examples.
Has there ever been a type of company that it has been harder to do that process with?
It's interesting. I mean, some of the clients that we've worked with and that we work with today, sometimes they're doing something quite technical and quite difficult. So we just onboarded a new partner a couple of days ago, actually. That's why it's fresh in my mind. They basically help manufacturing companies with, what do they call it? It's like anti-vibration technology. So if a piece of machinery is basically vibrating more than it should, and that causes you various problems, they produce like the sort of specialized rubber or materials that they can like insert into the machine, and it fixes the machine. So stuff like that can be quite complicated to try and write a sales letter about. But even in those cases, you're just following the same structure. And I don't know if we need to get into the actual structure of a sales letter as well, whether that would be useful for people to
Yeah, I
hear.
guess I get like, I wonder what, I'm trying to figure out what a company needs to have for it in order for it to work.
Mm.
Like, what are the key requirements for them, and what companies work best with it, or does it just doesn't matter?
I think I don't really know how to answer that.
Has there ever been situations where you're like, this is really difficult, and what are to get this company like communicating what they sell and how they sell it, or to get traction?
Yeah.
And what were the blockers in that? I guess that's kind of my question.
So long as we've identified the right sort of business that we're working with, which, like I said, is usually a B2B company, usually founder-led and run, typically a smaller organization, so probably less than 50 people in total in their headcount. Revenue between 500K and maybe 20 million is sort of our sweet spot. And usually they're selling something that's based on their expertise. So they might be a consulting company, they might be like, in this case, a manufacturing company. They might sell a software, but if it's based on their expertise, then this tends to work really well. So long as we've done a good job of identifying the customer on the front end, then this process will work, because it's a case of iterating until it works, right? It's like when it works, not if it's going to work. What I know less about is someone who wants to sell something e-commerce, and like that's probably different because you're just selling the product straight away rather than the idea behind the product. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that's a great answer, but that's what comes to mind.
No, I understand. So if a company came to you then, or you've onboarded them, what do you then help them with?
Yeah. So it comes from the product market fit hypothesis, which is what we talked about last time. So you've got to have your strategic positioning in place first. And that's why we always start with that. We do that in a workshop with all of our new partners. Once you've got your strategic positioning, it's basically taking that, we call it the product market fit hypothesis or your narrative. It's taking that and it's putting it into a sales letter framework. We've got a proprietary framework that we use for all of our sales letters. And that's what we run through with our partners. I'm going to give you some headlines today of what that looks like in practice.
Okay.
Because there's various different components of it. So I'll just whiz through it quite quickly and just let me know if you have any questions on it. So firstly, the headline, that's important. So the headline of the sales letter needs to be good. If it's not good, then people won't read it. So that's quite important.
What is that, like a big question or like a controversial statement or something like that?
Yeah, usually we talk about transformational headlines.
Okay.
So it's based on, like I said, again, I'm just such a broken record, but it's based on a before to and after, usually, from this to that or something like that. And then you've got your subheading as well. But the headline kind of combo, that needs to be good. Otherwise, people won't ultimately read the rest of the page. The one we've been using for probably 2-3 years now is this idea of stop doing marketing, start growing.
Yeah.
And with the right person, that really resonates with them because they've probably been doing a bunch of different marketing that hasn't worked.
Yeah, they can really see themselves. Yeah.
Exactly. Like they feel like they're doing marketing and not growth. So that's the headline. Headline. You always have to follow a headline, a big headline with some credibility straight away, for exactly the reason that we talked about before, which is people are instantly going to be questioning it subconsciously. Like, are these people who they say they are? So you need some sort of credibility. What people often use is logos of the companies they've worked with, or testimonials, or some kind of tickers with metrics from their business or something like that, reviews, that kind of thing. It doesn't need to be a full case study, but just like a sprinkling of credibility to go behind the headline. You then go into something we call niche identification. So this is where you make sure that you're speaking to the right people. So this is where you identify with the type of companies you want to work with, the type of people you want to work with, the challenges they might be experiencing, the outcomes that they want to achieve. And this is where in our sales letter, we unpack the idea of doing marketing and not growing. So it's relying on referrals, never found a predictable way to grow your business. You feel like marketing is a black box and you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, et cetera, et cetera. So again, if the right people read that and they resonate with it, they identify with it. And that's the idea of niche identification. There's then a challenge section where we explain why they're experiencing the problems that they're experiencing. There's then a solution section, which is where we unpack our thesis, which is how to achieve the transformation that they want. And you'll notice there's no talking about my business yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because like you can already see how people can get themselves in that situation. They would have tried a bunch of stuff, thrown something out into the ether, but actually what you're talking about there is very, very specific and very, very targeted. It's like really drilling down into the details of who am I speaking to, what are we actually saying.
Yeah.
So much more detail orientated, and it's making lots of little ticks psychologically for someone who might be landing on that page. Just be like, oh yeah, that's me.
Exactly.
I can see myself there. Oh, and I trust them as well because I can see all this
Yes.
social proof.
It's about story. So someone has to go through it as a narrative and as a story, and that each section leads on to the next one. And I think we've honed this framework over years and hundreds of use cases and examples, and it's incredibly effective if you get it right. And like you said, or like we were talking about, there's not a lot of talk about your company. You've got your social proof and credibility. You've got your case studies, which will come later. The next section is vehicle. So we've done headline, credibility, niche identification, challenge. So you've explained why they're experiencing the problem that they're experiencing. So for example, in our case, the reason you feel like you're doing marketing and not growing is because you're not looking for marketing, you're looking for growth, and growth comes from market resonance. So the reason your marketing is not working is you haven't found market resonance. So we're explaining the problem. The next section we call solutions. So this is our thesis on how to solve that problem or how to achieve the transformation we're talking about. So in our case, it's find market resonance using the market resonance framework. And that's valuable even with no information about my company. Then we introduce something we call the vehicle. This is where you talk about your company.
It's a long way down the process.
Yeah, right. So like now someone has identified with the problem. They've identified with your thesis around why that problem exists and how to solve it. You now introduce your company as, here's how we solve that problem. Like, here's the best option for solving that problem faster, more accurately, in a better way, whatever. And that's where you introduce your company and you say, great, if you've bought into this idea of market resonance and that it's important to grow your business and you think it's going to solve your problems, well, you could work with us to help you do this. We designed the whole framework around it. We've worked with more than 300 different companies to do it. Here's like why you should work with us rather than trying to do it yourself. You could do it yourself, but here's why to work with us.
It's so interesting from almost like a psychology kind of point of view. Like anyone, if you go and speak to someone, have a conversation with someone, and they just immediately talk about themselves, like you just switch off, don't you? You're like, oh, who is this person? But when they talk about you and they ask you questions, you're like, whoa, this person, it's so interesting, and like I really like this person. But actually, you're just talking about yourself because they're enabling you to do that. And then at some point along the line, you'll probably ask them about themselves as well. It's kind of that same kind of process, like really good psychology. You can't just immediately go in and just be like, this is my company. This is all the things we do.
I think so.
Buy from us.
Yeah, I think so. It's almost from How to Win Friends and Influence.
Yeah,
I think there's a chapter.
Why is it that we work like that though? Why is it that we need, as humans or as consumers, why is it that we need that process, do you think?
It depends how philosophical you want to get.
Yeah.
I would say it's because most people are inherently selfish. Not in a bad way, but like, let's be honest. You think about yourself much more than you think about other people, probably. In the nicest possible way. So the problem is, it's just, if I'm here banging on about myself, no, it doesn't get anyone's attention. I've had people recently who have said things to me like, I was looking at your content or I was going through your funnel and I knew I was being marketed to, but I still was like, oh, this is working. Like, this is exactly me. This is exactly what I want. So even with that awareness of like, I am in a marketing funnel right now, they're still kind of having that, oh, that's amazing. And this happens to me like every now and then. I come across a company or I come across a business and I'm like, oh, they've just done this so well. They've just absolutely nailed it. And they've targeted exactly who I am as an individual. And this really speaks to me. And that's what you basically want with your target customers. It comes from having the right product market fit hypothesis. But then once you've got that, you need to capture it in these growth assets that we're talking about.
Super interesting. Okay, so if I'm a founder or a CEO and I feel like my company's in that spot then where they're just throwing things out and no one is resonating with it and they want people to understand what they do and buy from them, what should they be doing now, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, go back and listen to the previous episode where we talk about product market fit hypothesis, because that's really the key. And then I would say have a go at producing your first growth asset. Feel free to. I mean, actually, at the moment we're testing something on our website, so it's actually our sales letter is actually not accessible on our website. Maybe it will be at the time of whoever's watching this. But feel free to go and kind of like reverse engineer what we're doing, see if you can apply it to your business. And have a go at crafting your sales letter and just focus it on the customer, where they're at, where they're trying to get to, and then what are the ideas that are going to allow that customer to get from A to B. So that's probably where I would start. I mean, there's loads of content on my YouTube channel and stuff like that, talking about growth assets, how to create them, that sort of thing. And come back next week because we're also going to be talking about demand building, which is the next part of the process.
Okay, sounds super interesting. What is demand building? Just give me a little snippet.
So this is what people often think of as marketing. So it's actually going out into the market, creating content, running ads, getting leads, like all of that good stuff. But you'll notice again, that's phase 3 of our process. People often just start there. So you've got your hypothesis now. At the end of the day, you should have your growth assets, or at least know how to make them. And then we go into traffic and demand building, which is getting some traffic and attention, driving traffic to those assets that we've created.
Okay, but definitely don't just skip straight to that place.
Definitely don't. It won't work.
All right, well, join us on the next episode then when we talk a little bit more about that traffic and demand building. Thanks again for being here. I hope you found it useful and interesting. Thanks again, Dave, for joining me. See you on the next one.
Thanks, mate.